Okay, let's get this show on the road. Wednesday, so you know what time it is. It's WIP time. How's everybody doing? Scott in the chat, Coffee Diction, Nikori, Sheila. Hope you're all doing well. Great to see you all here. Check. First. Do them in this order, I guess. No need to overcomplicate it. Yeah, how's everybody doing? Daniel was just too late with his update. Sorry, Daniel. Thanks for adding last minute. You were on the cusp. I was just adding everything, so I just snuck you in there as well. Daniel was unfortunately too late. Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, so for people who are new here, this is a weekly stream where I basically go through giving people from the community feedback. So, without further ado, I should clarify, this is mostly environment art, right? Because I'm an environment artist myself, so that's what I specialize in. So anything else I will still have a look at, but take it with a pinch of salt, you know. I do environments for a living, nothing else. Yeah, okay. Let's have a look. First on is Smooglin. Smooglin is working on a room that is based on their own room. Wanted to try and make a small 90s, like 2000 styled messy room that is like heavily inspired by his own room. Okay. You wanted to have it relatable to people growing up in the 90s and 2000s and do a rough illustration of what it would have been like. A small environment. But more specifically, what Smuggling wants some feedback on is the desk texture and the recent scene pictures. I mean, recent scene pictures is not really like anything that I can feedback on, you know? Like that is like too general, so we're kind of gonna skip past that. Maybe a hint for next time. I'll see if I can pick up some small stuff as I'm giving feedback, but we're mainly gonna focus on the desk texture. And then also some recommendations on what I should add to make the scene a little bit more interesting. Okay. That sounds great. So let's have a look. Did I have to post today to mark as feedback? I posted 4 days ago, but not sure if that's too far back. No, Magnus, you're fine. We're gonna have a look at your feedback in a little bit. I do this on a weekly basis, right? So basically anything within like a 7-day range that is marked as WIP Wednesday, I will have a look at. Just to really simplify the process a little bit. What's up? And then we're off to the races. Right, Smooglin, we'll have a look at the desk texture first. Yeah, so right now, I think you have a really solid base on the desk texture, right? But yeah, you can really push that like a little bit further, right? What I'm immediately thinking about is like more wear and tear, especially when it comes to just like how you would use a desk like this in the 90s, right? If I remember like one of my first desks, like they were pretty lived in, right? So like the edges were kind of worn. Like there was a lot of scratches on the most used areas, right? Let's see if we can find like a quick picture. Hi Carlos, thank you so much for the question, but we're gonna focus today on giving feedback first, and then maybe in the end, if we still have some time, I'll address some of the questions. But thank you so much though. I think our Friday stream is more relevant to questions. Sorry about that. I just want to focus on getting some of these images done. So let's have a look. This is like a very mild example, but it kind of highlights what I'm talking about. So you can see at the desk here, right? It kind of has like a lot of... Let's have a look. Let's do that instead. So it kind of has like a lot of wear and tear from just like people interacting with it, right? Like people like scuffing the edges and like people putting their hands on the table, and like over time that really starts to tear away on like the varnish of the wood, right? And then also like you can make the desk stand out by like having some of those spots, right? So imagine that that this area specifically has some of that like wear and tear, right? You look at this example over here. Right, where we look at like the roughness patches on it. And then the same can be done here as well, right? Like now all your roughness or like all your scratches, they are pretty generic. But what you probably want is to kind of push it more towards like areas again where you're going to be interacting with things, right? Also, I have no clue how this is supposed to work. Oh, are these meant to... Wait. No, they're too shallow to be that. Oh, or is it... Am I just not seeing it? Is it something... Something like this? I don't know. I'm just guessing here. It kind of looks weird because we don't really see what's behind it. There's no like shadowing, right? Yeah, you pull it. That's kind of what it looks like, right? But it's kind of hard to tell. Because maybe there's distance here, but we're not really seeing seeing the shadowing, right? So that's why it looks a little bit weird from this angle, but that's all good. So we were talking about the scratches, right? Now you have like a pretty generic coat of scratches, but try to make it so that you actually get a feel for like how this person would interact with the dead, right? And see if we can find some images here. Pretty... Most of them are going to be refurbished, right? Oh my god. It's so chaotic, that one. I mean, look, I'm gonna leave this step to you. Don't want to spend too much time just looking at references. But just give people an idea like how people would interact with this, right? So we're probably gonna see like a lot of interaction in this area because people are gonna have to pull it, right? So you're gonna see the same sort of like texturing as we would see here because it's the same sort of interaction, right? It's people like touching it with their skin, so it's gonna have like an oily residue after a certain point, and it's gonna have like a discoloration. And then also just, yeah, maybe offset, or like maybe have like one of these at like an angle that is not like 100% perfect. right? But we're getting like a little bit more interest into the prop. Like slightly crooked. Don't know how to spell that. What I mean? Yeah, and then really just figuring out like how you can localize the dirt, right? Like you wanna. This is a perfect opportunity to add storytelling into a single prop for the desk. So storytelling through textures. Think about it that way. You can do a lot, right? I saw that you were experimenting with some stickers as well. That's a good one, but I think you have to start from a layer that is like very logically driven, where it's like, oh, I'm bumping against it, like I'm pulling the drawers out a lot. All that stuff, you can cement that and implement that into a prop like this. And then yeah, some like discoloration. Dirt, oil affecting it. You know, like gamers are gonna be messy, so there's gonna be lots of stuff being spilled and then like quickly rushed, like quickly cleaned off, but like the stains are still gonna be there. That's all stuff that you can implement, right? Like give it a lot of character, especially for the texture of the desk, right? Because if you really think about it, like it's the 90s or 2000s, so all the interaction is probably going to be around the desk, right? Yeah. So just pushing it up to the next level. I'm sure that once you start digging through like the references, you're going to find a lot. For example, this is a really bad example, right? Like bad example as in like it's so damaged. I mean, yeah. You can really do something with that, right? Like you can really tell a story through it. This is straight from Reddit, so you know it's a good source, you know? As in like probably the people that spend the most time in their room. That's a good source, you know? Straight to the point. Really cool surface detail here. And then moving on to what else you could do. I'm gonna throw a question back to you, right? Because you say that it's heavily inspired by your room. So what was in your room? Right? Like what was in your room at that time? Like favorite games? Playing cards, maybe like discarded books, you know? Like college books or whatever, right? Really just think about it in that frame, right? Because I mean, we can look at a whole list. Oh, wait, before we dive into it, like think about what was in your room. Pet hamster. Let's chuck a hamster in there. Good suggestion. And if you don't know, like if this is like a big question mark, right? Then it's time to just look through some ref. Also, saw this really interesting post like a while back, is that we have the wrong sense of time and space because, and I'll explain how this relates to your work, right? But most people think about like a 90s room as in like, oh, this is like the decor of the 90s. These are the games from the 90s, this and that. But actually, if you really think about it, like unless you live in like a newly built space, your house and your room is probably not going to look like the 90s, but it's going to be like a room from like the 70s or 80s or something like that, that just has like a bunch of 90s stuff in it, right? So think about that as well. '90s room is probably going to be more like 70s to 80s room. Yeah, filled with like 80s to 90s stuff. Hey Andrea! Welcome, welcome. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Just really think about what you had in your room. And if you don't have a clue, like if you just can't really come up with any ideas, that's where you're gonna have to look into references. Like, talk to people. What they have in their room. Maybe it like jots some ideas. Maybe it brings back some memories, right? Like maybe you had friends over regularly. I don't know. Talk to your mom. Like, what did you have in your room? Like, what did you find in your room? You know? So talking to friends and family can be like a good way as well. And yeah. So much Lego. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be the same for me. I used to have... So, let me draw like a rough layout of my room, right? This is my room. This is my bed. I think I had like a desk here at some point, but I had this like cupboard. And like the bottom of the cupboard had like... my dad made like a little trolley that I could like ride out, and that entire thing was just filled with Lego. Just everything that I had from Lego was just dumped in there, and it was a lot. So I spent like countless amount of hours just like going through it, like cobbling stuff together. It was a really interesting creative time, I feel. Of course, when I was not playing outside and pretending to do my own role-playing games with my friends. Yeah, but that's gonna be it. Smuggling. What age depends. Oh, like what age depends on what they're gonna do? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. I think we kind of dabbled in Lego and then also Bionicles, right? I think Bionicles was also like a fad at that point. Nikita, hi everyone. Just wanted to ask if I can ask questions and get feedback on my project at your Discord if I get access through it. Patreon, I believe. Yep. Yeah. That's literally what I'm doing here, Nikita. Bionicle saved Lego, by the way. So I didn't believe that, but you mentioned that before, and I looked into it, and it's right, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I had no clue. That really blew my mind. That is so ridiculous. Okay. Next up, we're gonna keep moving on. We're going on to Magno, or Magnus, who is here. Get some context from the Discord as well. Oh god, Beyblades, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The first thing that I grew up with, like the first game that I can remember playing was marbles. Like I used to play with marbles and lippos. Like those were like things, I don't know if they were like even relevant in like other countries, but like you could get them in like packet of crisps or like chips. God, so many weird things. But let's see here. Magno. Or using SPy to see if you can get like the proportions right. Marbles as in glass balls? Yeah. Yeah. So we used to play a game where we you would have your marbles and people would say like, hey, I want to have that marble. And then you would tell them like, okay, if you wanna have this marble, you have to roll like 6 stones. And like 6 stones would be like the distance that they would sit at. And you would like as a kid like sit with your legs open and with your one of the marbles in between, the marble that they wanted to have. And they would have to roll until they hit that marble. And then they get the marble and like a section of their marbles back or something like that. I don't know. It's crazy. But let's have a look here. Hang on, overhauling all the assets. Many of them are outdated compared to. Would love to hear if you have some feedback on how I can improve scene while still staying through the original. So this is an interesting one, like the original thing, because it is still stylized, right? It is still has that like very cartoony style to it. I don't know if you want to stick with that. That would be like my first question to you, since you're here anyway. Because what I always find like super interesting is where you take something that has been rendered in a certain style, but then you take it out of its context and put it into like a very realistic style, or vice versa, right? Like the two things work very well in contradiction. For example, when Victor Oman, when he did like his work where he basically did his imagination of like a very realistic scene of like the gates of Orgrimmar. I don't know if that's right, never played WoW. But that looked really awesome because you have the contradiction between like the stylization and like the realistic side. That could maybe be something that you want. Changing up the textures a bit. So for instance, saw paper on the I want to use proportions stay the same as close as I can, with maybe a few exceptions. Yeah, I think the proportions just keep them realistic, right? If you have to change them up a little bit, I don't think you're gonna lose like the original magic. Unless you literally want to do like a fade transition between the two and like recreate it 100% purposely, right? But I don't think that you want to do that necessarily. I think honestly, like the first thing that really stood out to me was just how bad this was. As in, like it's also bad in the show, right? But like it doesn't really look like anything here. It doesn't look realistic. Kind of just looks like really weird. And again, not per se from your side, right? I think you try to kind of replicate what you had going in the concept, right? Or like in the original. But I think you can level that up to like the next level. But that's honestly like the first thing that really caught my eye as being like really weird in the scene. Just immediately. The rest of it looked quite nice, you know? But I want to use PBR textures. Okay. Yeah. I think honestly, most of it, what I would say here is exactly like you're saying, is it's like updating the textures to make sure that they have like a really response, right? That they have like you can do so much where like the ground catches a highlight, but then also have like a decal on the floor that indicates that there's like still like dust and all that stuff on the floor too. You can do some really cool stuff with a scene like this. I would probably What I do, such a weird one. I honestly think that like the main one is gonna be the materials. Giving the materials an update because the geometry and like the meshes, they still look good, right? They don't look too different. There are like updates that you can do to like the basket, for example. You can bring out the edges a little bit more, give it a little bit more character. Let's see. Yeah, like for example, like the chest, right? Where you have like a really nice layer of dust just for the chest. That would be really awesome if you could kind of like highlight that. Again, texturing work. But yeah, I think this transition to PBR and like working out like all the materials is gonna be really nice. Lighting as well possible. Yeah, I think what you could do in your case is use the lighting to kind of draw more attention to this side, right? Just have like the light pouring in here. Because honestly, like this window in terms of like focal points, right? Doesn't really add too much. It's just, it should be like a secondary thing, but to me, it should not be like the primary thing. So I want to see like more contrast. And this is my personal opinion, right? Like I would probably approach it like this, where I have like the sun coming in through this window, and you have like all the nice detail on the table, like nicely highlighted, where some of this stuff kind of falls more into the background. Kind of my interpretation of that. Yeah. Very, very, what is it? General approach, right? But I think these are the two main things that I would want to fix by looking at this, or like improve, right? Not necessarily fix. Yeah. Yeah, no. I think that's gonna be it. Don't really have too much more to add to this. I think you're 100% right that just the materials need changing. Sweet, thank you so much. No worries, thank you so much, Magnus, as well. Thank you for posting your work. This looks really nice, though. It's, again, I'm not necessarily like a fan of. Oh wait, actually, there's maybe one more thing. Try to be a little bit more careful with the intensity of some textures, right? This kind of goes into this area as well, talking about contrast, right? Because I feel like some of the colors here, especially the clock, are like really intense compared to your focal point, for example. I would expect a chair and like maybe some of the stuff on here to be more intense compared to some of the other stuff in the room, so that it draws more attention to where you kind of want people to look. Even though this clock is looking freaking crazy by itself. That pattern is just chaotic. Let's see. Yeah, that's the last thing that I wanted to say. No worries. Thank you so much, Magnus. And best of luck. Oh, yeah, I forgot. There was one thing that I was going to say. Like, I am. This is a chaotic scene, just from the concept, right? Just in terms of where you would focus, right? Obviously, movement has a big impact on this, because if you see the person like in the middle of the scene, like drawing and like moving his hands or like looking at whatever he's doing, you're automatically going to be focusing on this. But because you don't have that, you kind of have to my opinion, replace that with something else. Yeah, it's the last thing that I want to say. Good luck, Magnus. Good luck. Okay, coffee diction. Let's have a look. Okay. Small things here and there. Just a few questions. Any small things that I can add to boost the quality a little bit more? Anything else I should prepare as presentation besides scene, props, and material renders? Anything else worth showcasing? It was often said to show how things were done, but it's too broad to be able to focus. So wait, what do you already have? So besides the scene, the props, and material render. So let's start with the breakdown then. And if you want more information, I would advise you to check out some of the portfolio reviews if you're not already done that. Wireframe, poly count, texture maps, UV layout, that's about it, I think. Wireframe. Yeah, these are some of the examples that you could add, right? Your breakdown. Also, if you're showing, I'm gonna add this one here, especially for materials, context. So let's say, for example, you want to present your rug material, right? Don't just present that on like a sphere, but have the sphere like next to the rug, right? You would have, let me add that here. You would have like, I don't know, like a material sphere, and then maybe you see like the rug kind of poking from the back or something like that. Maybe the rug is kind of a weird example because it's literally going to look the same, but just make it look interesting in terms of presentation, right? I just picked the best UV, right? Yeah, any that looks good on probably the most important asset that you have in your scene, or which one you're going to present, right? Because the thing that you don't want to do is presenting the texture maps for one thing and then have the UVs for another thing, right? Don't want to do that. So try to keep it consistent with the rest that you have. And then some small things that could really boost the quality. Simple thing here. Whoop. Small things like that. You know, where you just have like a bit of the carpet folded up. You have like a swoop in the carpet. Maybe another one here. It doesn't have to be so dramatic, right? Keep that in mind. Yeah, just little bits like this. I would also look at the scale. Scale versus the fire as well, because I feel like, depends on what kind of table it is, but I would expect the table to be like somewhere along this height instead. Like maybe 1.5 times, or maybe 2 times as large. Maybe 2 is probably like a little bit too much, but like 1.5. I hope the bending works with POM okay-ish. I mean, the POM on the rug is usually so noisy that you can't really tell. Plus, I I did this on the rug that we have in the Christmas challenge. I also added like a little fold like this, and that rug also has POM, so I'm pretty sure that it will work. Other quick wins. Other quick wins. I can't really... What is POM? POM is parallax occlusion mapping. It's basically faking depth in your material. Let's have a think. Details. I'm thinking about like maybe you see like the wallpaper, the lines of the wallpaper a little bit more, right? It could maybe be something that's very subtle. We could enhance the scene a little bit. Maybe thinking about putting something here, maybe like a candle. Candle up there just to give like a little bit of light to that area. Doesn't really make sense on the book, but maybe on the top shelf here, like the top thing on the ladder, that we get like a little bit of secondary things to look at. I would honestly variations in the books, I don't think so, because you barely see any of them. So I don't really mind that. The thing that I would say though is because this section of the scene feels very empty, right? Like this entire wall feels like I want to put stuff there. The first thing that comes to mind is just having random stacks of books, right? And just go all in on the fact that he's this person, whatever he's like just has like amassed such a library of books that they're kind of piling out. And it's also something that you already have lying around anyway. That could be like an easy win, depending on if you want to do that or not. Maybe do the same thing here. Some books up there. Maybe that's like a row of the current books that he's reading. Yeah, and then really going all in on these bricks as well. Like maybe shifting like a couple of them. Oh, you're kind of doing that already here. Guess you could still have it. Should just a little bit more. Also, now that we're focusing on this, where's the chimney? Because usually the reason why this comes out of the wall is because you have like a place. Wait, let me draw like a top down. Right, so this is the actual wall. Usually like a fireplace comes out so that you can have the fire here, but then the chimney can be built into the wall for like a large portion, right? I don't know. It's not that it's too big of a deal. You can easily fake the effect by pushing this wall back though. That could also work and just give it more space. Could also work. That's a question mark. More books. I'm gonna leave that to you. Then there's like an additional candle here. Yeah, for this one, if you're gonna do like, if we're gonna do an interesting or like a zoomed in shot, then what are we looking at here? Right? That's basically what it comes down to. Because, yeah, we're focusing in on this little table here with the books, right? But what is it about these books that makes them separate from the other books, right? Why are we focusing so much on this book? What you could do is have a book open on a page that says something about like everlasting love or something like that, right? So you can get a hint of this person trying to remember like all the good times he had with his wife at some point, you know, just making shit up on the fly. Something like that, right? Like it basically comes down to this question, like what do you want us to see? Like it can be any story that you can come up with, but if you want us to see something here, like make sure that it's a little bit of portrayed here. And then also, it's not too bad. I was about to say maybe add like an edge in between, right? So that it's nice and round. But the more that I look at it, the more, like, the less that I care about it. Cringe. Oh my god. Scott, Beginning's Guide to Sacrifice. Yes. Yeah, and then I would also like put like a couple of books here. I'm basically just thinking about these books as like volumes to kind of block it in, right? Like, yeah, it's a little bit of, I don't know. Yeah, but that's about it. That's about it. Yeah. I think that's gonna do it. Let's have a look here in the chat. Good idea with the lines. We'll remove the flatness. Make sure it feels... Yeah, you can do a lot with that stuff. Especially on the wallpaper, right? A lot of good ideas. But... Okay, so more focus on something on the table, plus some storytelling. Maybe the book... Make it the book's a bit higher quality too. Got it? No, I think not necessarily making the books higher quality. I think it's just do something with it, right? Like have one of them like open where we can read something about like what he's reading or like what they're reading. I don't think the books necessarily have to be higher quality. If you want to do that, go ahead, but fine at this point to me. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Covidiction. Thanks for posting your work. And then we're gonna move straight on. I think this is a new member of our... Welcome. I can find it. Oh, here we go. BQZ. The objective to learn with this project is how to sculpt stone and wood. Still in pro. Cool. Okay, I'm mainly just gonna focus on the sculpting here, right? I'm gonna give you a little bit of feedback on that. Because this thing on the left, right? Like this obelisk, let's call it. That starts to look like stone. Which is really good. You got the essence there, right? I think the only thing that you could probably improve, or like the thing that I would want to improve the most, is probably... People would always say this to me as well when I was sculpting, by the way. Like, I had real issues with this too. But the blobby feel. Like, where you have these surfaces and they kind of feel like very rounded, you know? And they don't really fit with like carved stone. You can kind of see it here on the edges, like some of the edges feel soft. So going in with, oh my, with a trim dynamic, something like that, to make it like harsh again. That's probably gonna help you a lot. Yeah. Then on this side, this one is interesting because I feel like you went a completely different direction with the way that you sculpted. I don't know which one came first, right? But it almost felt like this one came second because it looks way more like natural stone compared to this one. Where this one just has like pretty generic edge damage, and then it looks like you just went over it with like very rough noise. But it makes it feel like really noisy at the moment. Whereas I know that some of them might feel noisy just because they've been outside for such a long time and they have like this mossy coat on top of it, right? Yeah, I think if you were to layer it up like that, then you would probably want to have this kind of feel on the surfaces that are going to be mossy, and the rest you just have as like it's like actual stone. You can also do that in your texturing program too. Find some images, some reference here. No idea. Stone torch. That's enough. So we got the newer ones, and they kind of look like what you did in your approach, right? Where they're like very machined kind of look. That's probably not what you want to do with your things, right? Honestly, also, now that we're kind of talking about this, and this might be a personal preference, right? I've heard cases for and against, but any high frequency detail, I would personally leave that for painter or designer or whatever you use for texturing, because it's way easier to like change it up, get additional control, compared to then having to go back to the sculpt and like tweak it a little bit. It's usually very annoying. Let's see, stone. Oh, 100% what Scott is saying now. Basically saying the same thing, like a lot of that tertiary stuff. These smaller details, right? Like just painter. It's so much easier doing it. So let's have a look. Look for. I guess we could go with it. We could go with this one. So now we have this guy, our ref. So what we're gonna try to replicate is we're gonna basically ignore like all the noise, right? But we're gonna focus on spots like this. Like these little patches of damage, right? And like the edge damage. That's all the stuff that you want to sculpt. See if we can pick out some more. Yeah, that's the stuff you want to sculpt, and then just leave the rest of it just for painter in that case. Texturing is looking pretty interesting though. I think you're getting some interesting looks here. I'm not gonna comment on it too much because that's not what you asked feedback on, but this is definitely what I would look into. Like trying to get rid of the blobby feel for sure, right? Like making things less blobby and like sharper. And then using the sculpted detail like where it matters. I think honestly, this one is a really good example of how you should approach things. Because it seems like you kind of left all that detail for painter. So yeah, Thomas, that's a great job so far. Looking forward to seeing it come together. And yeah, if there's any more questions for anyone that's already been, make sure to re-tag your thread, right? Like when I post these overpaints, I also remove the filter that we have. So make sure to like re-tag it again. Kind of done with this session. Next up, we got Casper. Casper. Okay, so pretty generic feedback. I'm just gonna keep it like pretty quick over here. The main thing that I feel is that you have the main structure, right? So we have this main structure, which is like we were discussing in the chat before today. That's our focal point. And all the rest you kind of don't need. Because what's cool about like a composition like this is that this main structure is only going to stand out if you then don't surround it with things that are going to distract from it, right? So the way that you want to build this up instead is that you have, this is like a very traditional thing, but like a triangle composition, right? Where everything just basically goes, well, we can call it like a pyramid composition, I guess. But like your highest point is going to be your focal, right? Everything is kind of building up. Where this tower, I don't even know what the tower is because I can't really see it. So that's just, I don't know, a little weird to have it there. Plus you have like all this radio equipment on top of this tower anyway. Might as well just keep that. And I would honestly remove all the stuff that's just like random clutter around it that doesn't really have anything to do with it necessarily. I would really focus on the core building and trying to tell a story with that building and maybe like a couple of props beside it that are relevant to that build, rather than trying to add stuff that may or may not be relevant at this point. Like really try to block out with like a story in mind. Like try to tell something. Rather than just have like, oh, you know what would be cool? I'm gonna make a base that's kind of Starfield inspired and kind of has like these random things that I know from Starfield. Try to really look into like why the things, because that's important. You're trying to construct your own environment. Like for example, I wouldn't necessarily cut these guys out because that kind of makes sense because there's no solar panels on here. And then what you could do is you could have like a battery pack or like a charging station next to it that then connects to like both solar panels. Kind of has like a little display next to it. Maybe that routes directly into the building, right? And maybe there's like some cooling on top of it as well. We have like, I don't know, vents, and then could be interesting is if people are delivering stuff to it, right? You have like a kind of a track. It kind of goes to like the front of it, kind of leads away from it, but you can see like these road markings coming in and out, and it's just like making like a rotation. So you could conceivably add like these things to your environment that can tell like a story onto itself, right? Without necessarily having to like dump like a whole bunch of containers. Okay, gonna leave it at that. Casper, good luck. Looking forward to the next iteration. Kitty Scarlet. This is looking great. First of all, welcome to the community. Happy to have you here. Saw you're a new member as well. Happy to have you. Let's get some context here. This piece was done in 3 weeks for the Atom Hawk Under Strength art competition. Design competition for both two together. Okay, okay. But since I didn't make the shortlist, I'm happy with it. I feel like I could post it on. I'd like to take it further, but I can't see what I want to improve. Okay. Just wanted to know your opinion on the piece in general and whether or not it's worth being on my portfolio. But to be more specific, it'd be good to hear comments over overoccupied and underoccupied areas. And if something in the picture looks off, lighting is also questionable. Yeah, okay. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. I love all the time that you put into it though. Like it really seems like you put like a lot of time in it, especially for 3 weeks. Came out nice. I think you can be proud of the end result. Don't shoot yourself in the foot like this. Come on. Lanterns are awesome. I love the lanterns. Okay, so the thing that I also really love about this scene is that you have like a really nice base contrast going on between your colors. We have this like blue in the background, which is then like really nicely contrasted with like the orange in the foreground, which is really nice. I think we can push that a little bit further and make sure that some of the colors are, or some of the areas are like a little bit turned down compared to what we want to see in your focal point. And what I'm feeling is that if we can find a way, maybe cut this out where we maybe just have like a couple of these guys, right? Like the fire poking through, so that you still have the indication of a fire being there, but it's not just really taking your view away. And then potentially, let's see how we're gonna do this. What I want to do, I'll explain what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to make this area lighter, especially potentially keeping the orange values, right? But I want to push like how much light there is in this little area over here, so that we kind of push the contrast even more. And we have this space a little bit more filled out. So what I would do in the engine is I would literally place like a fill light somewhere to just kind of like light up this whole area a little bit, right? That's how I would approach it here. Obviously this is going to be a little bit more difficult as I'm trying to do it live. It's not this, but like I'm trying to do it in, well, Photoshop, right, into 2D. Burn it. I keep flipping these two around. I really want to brighten up this area. I also don't want to I don't want to have it clipping either, right? But I think just really pushing the contrast between the two could be like really. So let's see. If we were to paste it, does that work? Ooh, funky. Oh, this guy. That up. We're gonna make it a little bit less complicated. Let's just do this. Like, I really just want to push, like, you can kind of see what I'm trying to do. And hopefully. I mean, it's a pretty bad setup here. Let me make it extra clear. Because I'm seeing, like, a natural divide here, which is... we have this foreground element, right? And everything behind it basically this entire shape. Everything here is blue, and then everything before it is orange. That's the way that I would set it up. And like really make it like really. And try like the thing that I'm thinking about. There's a C from. Guess it'll have. This is this space has like a really nice color contrast that just immediately reminds me a little bit of your scene as well. Slightly different, right? But it has like a very well-defined color palette between the two. Kind of see. You kind of see that we have like lots of warm tones, right? But then the contrasting elements, you kind of have like these blue hues. How can we join the Discord? I think there should be a link in the description of this video. And also, let's see, make sure that. Yep, it's in the description of this video. Check out that link. Become a member. So yeah, like well-defined contrasting colors, right? I think that's what you're playing with. The only thing that is currently pretty annoying is that there's still like a lot of blue like bleeding into the foreground of the scene. Just push the separation between two volumes and I think you're onto a winner. Like honestly, this is looking really good. And also make sure that you, whenever you do so, right? Whenever I'm looking at this area specifically, I would add like a light here, for example, right? Like I was saying before. Make sure that this light also adds extra attention to like this bench over here. So this is roughly like the 3D location of it. It doesn't have to be precise. Just something that lights up the space like a little bit more. Like it has like a nice fill light. It'll look really nice. But yeah, I would honestly keep this in your portfolio because it looks really nice. You put in a lot of work. I can see the passion that you have for creating like all these exquisite details for it. And just with like a couple of minor tweaks, I think you really have a winner on your hands when it comes to putting this in your portfolio. The one thing that I will say is, and this is an assumption on my part, right, is you got to look at who you're trying to cater this for, right? Because you say that it's like an Adam Hawk competition. So I'm assuming that during the design competition, you cut a lot of corners, which means that you can potentially, or I think that there is a potential to not have that many breakdowns that you can add for game related stuff, right? So maybe it would make sense to take the main prop and texture it again, or like make it again, but really make it like the best prop that you've ever made. Because I'm assuming, just by looking at it, right, that this is made out of like a tileable texture, tileable or a trim or something like that. Again, might be my assumption. Make this kick-ass. The reason why I pick this is because that's probably going to be like your focal point, right? So anything that's going to be relevant to you, just make that the best that you can. And then you also have something on your art station that you can then break down and do like a really game relevant prop out of, right? So I'm trying to kind of set you up as in like we're gonna lift the whole environment up, but then we're also gonna look at how we can make it more relevant to games, assuming that. Yeah, that would be like my thing, because look, like the stuff that you put on here looks awesome. Oh, this is really cool. Like all this stuff. Fuck yeah. Love it. Perfect vibes. Thank you, Tim. Yes, that's a titleable. Yeah, I assumed so, because that's what you have to do during a challenge, right? You're under time crunch. So makes total sense to me. Did you mean putting an actual light source for extra ambient light? Yes. Hold up. Yeah, it's in Unreal, right? So yeah, if it's in Unreal, then I would put like an actual light source that is like very dim and probably has shadows turned off and also doesn't affect the specular, so that you don't get, maybe the specular doesn't matter too much, but yeah, just trying to get like some more ambience in there, right? So like a heavier mood, a heavier contrast between the orange and the blues. And yeah, I think you're onto a winner then. Honestly, this scene is awesome. Let me add a reference here as well so that you can look it up yourself. Okay. Yeah, and again, welcome to the community. Happy to have you here. Yeah. That's all I have to say about it. Oh, wait. Maybe one last tip. I'm kind of going to do it here. Right? So with these guys, what I am going to do, this is like the squint test, right? So this is where, well, you would physically squint to look at something, or you would do this, right, to kind of see where your values are and like where you're being directed to, right? And if we then purely look at the values, you can kind of see that there's something in a transition between the last and the second to last frame that kind of got lost, right? Like the foreground was way more lit up than it is here. And I think you kind of need to get the best of both worlds. Like, just push it back up again. But this is a really, really good way of showing it. There's another trick here as well. In your navigator, if you just have like your entire scene as like a single screenshot, it allows you to see like everything just in minute detail, right? Can also help. Win test. Okay. Best of luck. Best of luck, Skitty Scarlet. Yeah, again, this is an awesome scene. Great job. Great job. Just final touches on it, right? Awesome. And next up, got Hila. Hila wanted a little bit of back on the bird. A bird from the scene that you can see on the right. I just added this in for extra context. This is not representative of the final result. I think the bird looks awesome. Did you have to stay on that? Looking at the ref as well, I like the concept. This obviously comes with the caveat that, first of all, it's been ages since I sculpted something, so that in mind. Yeah, I think this looks good. There's nothing really that's really throwing me off at this point. And I think you can kind of see, so something that's interesting, right? If we compare this one to the one from Thomas B, right? I think you're still seeing like a little bit of, I wouldn't necessarily call it blobbiness, right? But for the sake of making a contrast, we'll call it that. You can still see that there's some bumpiness in here, right? But I honestly don't mind it here because, first of all, it's larger scale. And it kind of adds to this feel that it's not like perfectly sculpted, right? But this is sculpted and then worn down like over time. And it kind of creates like a nice contrast between the sharper edges and then just like the softer forms. Yeah. I'm honestly just gonna say, love it. Don't really have anything to say, Sheila. I'm just gonna say thank you for making art, because this looks awesome. I think if your entire scene is gonna have so much love and passion put into it, the scene is gonna look freaking gorgeous. Okay. So next up we have Chill Bill. Have a look, because this is gonna be an interesting one. Oh, could you also give me a little bit of feedback about the rock sculpt? Oh, did I miss that? Yeah, sure. Oh, and the rock sculpt. Sorry, Sheila. I missed that. Let's get the rocks in here. Just overwrite your scene. Oh, wait. Do bird to the side. It's over here. Bird just peeking through. Okay. These ones are interesting. So the first thing that really stands out to me with these rocks, right? They still look nice and clean. But the first thing that really bothered is a big word. But like that you almost have like it's hard to describe, but like a substance generator, like edgeware thing going on, where every edge is almost like the same, right? It kind of has like a very filtery kind of look to it, where like you would probably expect like softer shapes or like really sharp edges over here and then like bolder edges in certain areas, right? Like that's the thing that I really liked about the bird, is that it had like shapes, whereas this one doesn't really seem to have that, right? It's all just like the same sort of cuts. Like it's all relatively same sort of cuts with then like the same sort of sizes as well. Bring up some. First look at the concept. Yeah, I mean, the concept does allow for like a lot of freedom, right? Just have a look at some random rocks, you know? As you're working with like a small river, right? It'd be interesting to look at something like. Let me just browse here. Because most of them are going to be round, right? But I know that you don't want that either, because that just looks kind of boring, right? So what I'm kind of looking for is like a rock that has been in the river, but also spend like a large portion outside of it. These are cool. It's getting somewhere. Oh. Okay, this is gonna take me a little bit longer. Let's have a photo. Because yeah, I think you really want something that has like a little bit of contrast, right? Like between like nice, sort of rounded shapes, but then also like sharp. Let me see. Getting pretty close here. Looking through like a bunch of family pictures. Where I'm just nerding out and like taking too many pictures of rocks. Okay, I'm just gonna post this guy in here. It'll have to do. I want to spend too much time. I think. Okay. Back with the rock. We can kind of see that we have like a larger shape variation in this one, right? I'm specifically looking at this guy over here. Like a pretty nice shape. You get like high density, right? Which you could like kind of translate to the stuff that you're doing here. But then also, like, the rest of it looks a bit more smooth, you know? You have like the large smooth section, quote unquote smooth. No, it's not 100%. But then trying to make the other part into something that's like really sharp and rigid. Kind of playing off the shapes between the two. Because it doesn't have to be like 100% smooth either, right? I know that you're trying to replicate some of this stuff here already, but I think you can smooth out, like, for example, this surface a little bit. Not have some of this stuff and maybe just reduce it to, like, I don't know, one bigger section, right? And have this all smooth. That you... What I'm basically trying to do at this point is I'm trying to give like a little bit of interesting contrast between the shapes on the individual, right? So that we're trying to get rid of like this very substance painter filter kind of look that you have going on now. I'm sorry, like that's probably like the best way that I can word it, but it feels like it's very, very generated. See what I'm saying? Also, if you haven't looked at it already, we also have a workshop on this exact same thing with Ivana Lischwager. So yeah, go check that one out. Does an amazing job at like teaching you how to sculpt wood and rocks. So yeah, but I do like the majority of the shapes, right? Just pinching some of the areas, make like the shapes like a bit more contrasty. And then having like some other contrast here where you soften some of the shapes up is going to be really nice when it comes to creating a little bit of contrast. Then also, you could probably do the same thing as here, right? Where you have like these little dots where they kind of create like a very interesting high frequency detail on like certain sections. Be very interesting. Yeah, I know it's tricky. Never been that good at sculpting rocks myself, so I'll say that. Yeah, best of luck, Sheila. I hope that helped. Couple notes on. So basically comes down to soft versus sharp. Thank you. No worries. Thank you so much for making awesome art. Keep it up. This is gonna look awesome. Okay. Back to Chill Bill. Let me get some context here again. So the stuff that we're seeing on the left, make sure, please. Cannot move. Move. Is it because I'm... I can move with my pen. It's fixed. So what are we looking at here? So the sections on the left, they are baked. And then on the right, we have the low poly. So, this is a really complicated prop. I'm just gonna throw that question out there. Because this is the main thing that kind of worries me. I'm coming into this, no context. I have no clue how much stuff you've done before, right? So this might be completely fine. But I'm just gonna throw it out there. How much experience do you have, especially when it comes to baking? Right? Or like complex prompts. Because this thing is really complex. And you just done a bake. But I think like there are some like glaring issues that kind of indicate to me that it would probably be like be more interesting or like in your interest to go with something simpler first. Let me point some of the areas out, right? Okay, so one of the areas here. How should I do this? So like, let's say this entire edge has no bevel, which you probably want to have baked down from the high poly, right? But this doesn't really have like any noticeable bevel that's being baked down, which is the whole reason why we do bake a high poly down onto it, right? Just to get that like nice highlighting from bake complexity down to simpler shapes. That's why we do it. There's an area here as well, which doesn't have, well, it's kind of a weird one, right? Because right now in its current state, it doesn't have enough geometry to kind of support it in the low poly. But also, like, it's not a shape that you would necessarily bake down because it is very shallow, right? So you could easily bake this down without any issues in your low poly. So this doesn't have a bevel. I mean, lots of areas don't really have a bevel, right? If we really started looking at it, like even these plates, like the bevel on them, I know that it has a bevel, but like it's so small that you probably want to exaggerate your bevel in your high poly more. Certain areas have like a nice bevel to them, right? But let me make sure. Yeah, but then that bevel is like pure geometry. So why are we baking down? Right? This is a question that I'm asking myself with this, and like the whole thing why I'm asking this question is because I have a real feeling that you want to start with like something way simpler than this. And you actually have like a good example here, right? These jerry cans. They're perfect. Like a perfect prop. Because they have like a good amount of complexity still in them, but it allows you to train like your baking, right? And to really make sure that once you get a bake, that you have all the details that you want to have in your bake transferring to the low poly. Because from what I can tell, if this is just like a bake, then the only bevels that we're getting are from low poly itself, right? So I don't see the benefit of baking down a high poly for it at all. Which kind of defeats the whole point, right? If this is like an exercise in baking a car down. Let's see. Same thing with the wheels here as well, right? Like if we really zoom in, like all the small stuff. Doesn't need to be baked down. No bake. So a rule for what you want to bake is, well, it's not a 100% rule, right? But like a good way to start is if anything doesn't contribute to the silhouette in like a major way, right? Then just bake it down. For example, yeah, so these bolts are baked down. That's freaking awesome, right? I love that you've done that. Like all this stuff on the fuel cap can also be baked down easily. And the amount of geo that you have on the fuel cap itself can also be reduced drastically. Same here, you have like a whole bunch of edges which don't really add to the geometry of the car, or like the silhouette of the car, right? But they have like a significant impact on the topology, on like the poly count. So you might as well remove them because they don't significantly add anything to the silhouette. What you would probably do, I know that you have a couple of bevels because you have 3 lines coming out of here. You want to vanish them to like the closest point. And so your setup would look something like this instead, where all these lines are basically gonna vanish to this one point over here. Same for this guy. And then you don't have all this stuff here either. So all in all, and I kind of hate saying this right here, but I think it's best to take a step back. Pick something smaller, like really work on your topology and like your fundamental understanding of how much topology a low poly needs, high poly bake, and do it with something like way simpler. Like you could even strip the car down, right? Like just take the wheel and like use it as a benchmark for like how low you can go, and like really train yourself on like what you need to do, like which steps you need to take, like how are you gonna lay out the UVs, where are you gonna do, where do you need a bevel, where don't you need a bevel, like all that stuff is like super important, like fundamentally to the understanding of how you need to bake a prop down typology. So even if the car looks okay-ish, right? Like this doesn't really add anything to your portfolio if you were to add it as like, hey, look, this is a high to low poly baked car, because as soon as other people are going to see the amount of geometry that you've added to support like the high poly or like the low poly, they're gonna have the same conversation internally as I'm having to you right now, straight up. So I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna say pick something easy. Like I said, maybe take something from the car, separate it out to like a prop by itself, and then like use that as a benchmark to really train onto how to bake, how to make topology, how to make a proper low poly. That being said, I want to end on a high note, which is really important. Like, I love the passion that I'm seeing, right? The attention to detail, like the amount of modeling that you've done, just raw modeling looks really good on the car. You've got like the shapes, you've got like a bunch of additional pieces on top of it, and it all makes sense, right? I can even sort of tell like which car it is, still like under all the plating. So all this stuff looks really good, right? I just want to make sure that you're technically set up to well, first of all, have like a proper understanding, right? And then also add like way more value to your portfolio once you've done a proper, right? And it's properly baked down and it has all the technical bells and whistles that it needs. This is going to be freaking impressive. But I think for that, we need to take a step back, regroup, and then try something smaller. If there's anything else that I can help with, like, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to post in the community, ask for help. We're here to help. Yeah, thanks for posting your work. And I'm looking forward to see how you're gonna improve this. It's gonna be awesome to see. Okay, Chill Bill. Thanks so much. I think also welcome to the community, right? Because you're new here as well. So, yeah, welcome. Do we have more people? I want to make sure that we don't skip anyone. Oh no, I closed it. No. Okay. Last one up for today. We got Paula Maria. Had a quick look at this already. Looks really interesting. So let me get some context here. I'm starting my next environment and I would like to address the reconstruction of the Maidan settlements. Probably butchered that name. But these are settlements in the Mesopotamian marches after the Second Gulf War. Main focus is buildings, which are built of. Currently working on a rough block out for the buildings and started creating the materials. At this point, I would appreciate feedback regarding the materials and any other thoughts. First of all, freaking awesome idea. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this. So, the idea itself just gets like a 10 out of 10 for me already. Just for its uniqueness, right? I love these references. I love that we're kind of seeing the construction of these buildings. Like, this looks so awesome. Like, I'm just looking at this and I'm like, ooh, okay, this looks interesting. Let's have a look. Dang, and these are your materials already? It's looking freaking awesome. Yeah, I'm probably not gonna have too much to say about this one. Because it looks great, you know? It looks really great so far. Let me see. So, yellow is gonna be there, and then blue is gonna be there. Actually have a look. So it's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be this construction. Yeah. This looks awesome already. So I've been experimenting with this in my scene as well. I'm gonna see. Hi Paula! Glad to see you here. I was just saying that this is like an awesome idea. I love this idea so much. It's very unique. And I was just gonna talk about like an experiment that I was doing with my scene, because I had tarps, right? And I had wattle. And before that, I didn't make them. Oh, sorry. Wattle are these like walls that are made out of like sticks, just like bundled together, right? Before that, I didn't have them with opacity, but now I do. And I think it looks so much better. So that's the only thing that I can say here. If you don't have opacity on this yet, might be worth experimenting with opacity. But I mean, this is all going to be clearer once you start building with them, right? Sure that this is all going to work out. Wanted to add that as like, it's planned. Of course it's planned. Love it. But yeah, no, the materials look really good as well. It's going to be very interesting to see what you're going to do with them in the engine, because there's a lot of cool tricks that you can do to kind of create like additional variation, or have them blend with the earth a little bit better, or, you know, just create like random variation. I don't know how big the scope of this is going to be. Yeah, so I don't know how much of these you're going to build, right? Because then what you're then looking for is like an additional layer that you can control in the engine that gives you more variation between the buildings, right? There's a whole bunch of ways that you can achieve that. Yeah, no, this looks awesome. I mean, the materials that I can see here, the only thing that I have to say about them, and it's literally the only thing, is like get them into the engine and start testing with them, because like these look awesome. They look really clean, really neat. Yeah, you're off to a good start, I would say. Let's see. I mean, you can do this in all sort of ways, right? But like, I'm specifically looking at these guys over here. Where's my pen? Keep looking at these guys over here, right? Which are basically just made out of like individual pieces of reed just sticking out. You could cut them out here, map it onto a cylinder, right? That's one option. You could make it unique as well. Have like an atlas of unique stalks that you can just bundle together, scatter the way you want it to. But you're definitely gonna need some of those to add like an additional layer of complexity on top of your tileable item. Not on top of your tileable, but especially to make the silhouette of things like more interesting, right? Also another thing that looks really good on these, because I've been experimenting with it myself, POM works really well on this stuff. Yeah, looks awesome. You know, don't really have too much to say on it, so I'm just looking forward to it. Oh, okay. One last thing, maybe. Try to have some gaps in here, right? Like the occasional gap. We can kind of see like the fabric behind it. Maybe like one of these is kind of like ripped in two. Small details, maybe. Maybe it could be like an additional variation of the material, but that could really sell it. Antonio, hey boss, don't say that. Hate that. You don't have to call me boss. No one's boss. How are you doing, Antonio? But yeah, honestly, Paula, this is awesome. I mean, I'm just really excited about the stuff that I see on the right, and I'm even more excited by like the materials that I see that you've already made. Like, if everything is gonna be up until that standard, like this is gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be a freaking awesome project. Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting for the next update now, you know? Like, no pressure, but I'm gonna be watching this one. Thank you. No worries, no worries. Good to help. Yeah, I'm just excited about this stuff. Like this is very unique, very distinct. Always happy to see it. Okay. Antonio came in late, but I think I'm gonna cut it here. I'm just gonna keep it very short and sweet, and I'm probably gonna do a little bit more work on my scene. But yeah, thanks so much all for being here. If you want to become a member of our community, go check out the link down below. And yeah, excited to have you all here. This is, I mean, really awesome to see like everyone's work, and yeah, really excited to see how this is all going to come together. So best of luck everyone who participated, and all the other people that didn't participate in the community. Forward to seeing. And with that, I'll see you all later. Stay creative. Bye bye.